My name is Hussain Dawood. I represent the Indus Entrepreneurs Karachi chapter here, an organization that you're very well aware of. You expect a lot from it, and inshallah we're going to deliver on your expectations this year. Here's our first gift for you, somebody who needs no introduction. And when I was communicating with the people present here, a lot of you asked, what is it that he's going to talk about? And my response was very simple. I said, it's heart-to-heart personal storytelling. So it's not a business presentation, it's not a speech, it's Dawood Saab, his personal story. And of course it will allow for a lot of questions from our end. It's a smaller setting, more interactive. So please hold on to your questions. It will be better if you script them down. Better the quality of questions, better the discussion will be. Without any further delay, in your huge round of applause, Mr. Hussain Dawood. If you're loud enough, you can do without it. No, it's okay. You can put it in your pocket.
What if I walk off?
No problem.
Maybe you get home. Assalamu alaikum wa I'm overwhelmed. All of you would like to hear something about my life. I think your life would be far more interesting. But I'm a reluctant, private person in that sense. I don't mind sharing some experiences with you in the hope that perhaps you might find something interesting, something valuable in it. So I'd like this to be more of an educative process rather than a monologue. So we've got to exchange. And that's what makes fun. You know, we talk to each other, try to learn, try to understand. And you want to know. So, can we agree to some of the basic rules? That we are working together?
Yep.
That's a dialogue, not a monologue?
Right.
That we want to make it an interesting experience?
Yes.
Something that we hope later on in life we could turn around and reflect when we're much older and turn and say, you know, I remember served a long time ago over in the Movenpick there. We had a lovely session for a couple of hours where we exchanged ideas and we had a dialogue, and it was a session that was worthwhile. Okay?
Yep.
That's the objective. So I'd love to hear your questions. Don't expect me to be competent to answer them. I'll try my best. But I still want to hear your questions. And I think that we should realize that we are one team. We work together. Okay? All right. So where do I start? Well, primarily, I suppose we start off with the fact that I have now 45 years of experience in the business world. And I started in 1968 after receiving my 2 degrees. First degree was in the subject of metallurgy, what's known as material sciences these days. And the second was an MBA from the Kellogg School at Northwestern University. Okay? When I graduated from there, I came back to Karachi. But an interesting thing happened. When I graduated, my father came over for my graduation. You know how fathers are. They're very proud that their children graduate and have a degree and they can stand there, you know, and participate in the graduation ceremony. So we had that, and we flew over to Washington. Now, he had some friends in Washington. And we had some work to do also. You see how fast you get into business? You graduate in June, and you're working in July. So what happened was that we were there to sign the agreements with the World Bank for the financing of the Dawood Hercules Fertilizer Corporation. The project had started in 1967 when Ittifaq, and this is how events take place. An American had visited Karachi and was staying at my uncle's, just as a friend. And while he was there for a couple of days, he had his daughter here. She came to Pakistan to have, get some experience about being abroad, etc. So they started talking, and one thing led to another. They said, why don't we put up a fertilizer factory? So he went back to his headquarters in Wilmington, and there was interest in that, interest on our side. We commissioned Bechtel Corporation, which is a major engineering company, to work out a feasibility report. They did that. We then negotiated. When I said we, basically for us, it was a new experience. To put up a major fertilizer project is not something that you do when you're a textile wala. You've got to know what you're doing. So Hercules took on the majority responsibility for that, and they negotiated all the various agreements, and then we of course negotiated agreements with the World Bank for financing the project. And the World Bank gave, for the first time in its history, a direct loan to a private sector party. They'd never done it before, and they gave it to the Dawood Hercules Chemicals, which was a loan of $32 million at 6.25%. In addition to that, USAID invested. They gave us $40 million. IFC took 10% of the equity. Hercules took 40, we took 40, and IT took 20, and we gave some to the public. And so the project was to be established. So the signing of those World Bank agreements was in July 1968. And that was my first job. So from graduation, I went straight there. Agreements were signed, we came back, and then the whole project started. I was placed in head office here, Dawood Center, where I am today now. And this massive work started. Fluor Corporation were our main EPC contractors, and we had, of course, Mitsui Tuatsu. It was a Mitsui Tuatsu process for the urea, and we had Kellogg for the ammonia. But the main contractor was Fluor Corporation. So they drove the whole process. We had, of course, we always set up what's known as an owners group, which oversees the whole project. So the owners group was composed, of course, of Hercules and ourselves. We oversaw the whole project. The project was completed within time and within budget.
Wow.
So it's 1971, October was when we were supposed to start the project. And guess what happened?
There it is.
Yeah, war with India.
Wow.
And they came and they bombed the place.
My.
They actually shelled the project. The Americans took off, they went off to Afghanistan. Obviously, we wanted them out of there, because after all, they're our responsibility. And one of the shells came and hit one part of the project. Not serious, but we got one shell which exploded, and we made that a decoration piece. So we got this lovely little, blown up shell in the canister, and it's a lovely decoration piece now. So that was back in 1971. Of course, the project created a huge hype in Lahore. A massive project of this nature coming in, major investment. At that time, it was cutting edge technology. The largest size you could get in urea processing was 1,000 tons a day, and this was a 1,000 tons a day project. So it had its impact on society. Of course, we had changes taking place. You know that, don't you? 1968, who was in power? Ayub Khan. 1969?
Yeah.
1972? There you are. So this 3-year period was quite eventful. You had a lot of changes taking place. So Dawood Hercules started. But let me take you back a little bit on how we got there. How we got there is that basically our family was already a business family in undivided India. We had established ourselves as the cotton yarn kings of India. Literally, we set the price, we set the market trend, We had 40 branches all over India, and we had a roaring business going on over there. But before we got there, we also had the privilege of going bankrupt. My father was in the business of mirch and spices. And one day he comes home to the family and says, well, we've got a lot of mirchi, you better start eating it. Because nobody will bust. So you have to appreciate. You want to succeed, you must understand that failure is a fundamental part of learning. Now whether failure is large or small, it's not the issue. The issue is, do you learn something from it? And I'll give you an example. When I was at school, I was a prefect, and this little young fellow, by the way, I had all my schooling in England, so I'm not very good at the Urdu language, So this young fellow came along, and he had this golf club in his hand. So I said to him, come here, you, give me a golf club. Took his golf ball, put it down. And looking over that way, there was the green. And in front of the green, there was this beautiful tree, massive tree. Now, if you're a good golfer, the question is, how would you skillfully get the ball onto the green anyway? Being a prefect, of course, I had to show off a little. I turned around, put my there, I whacked the ball. Beautiful shot. Even today, I remember it. After so many years, what a shot. It was right over the tree and landed on the green. I said, see, that's how you play golf. I walked away and said, what the hell did I do right? You learn nothing from success. You learn things from failure, not success. So here, a perfect golf shot. I learned nothing. If I did a bad shot, it gone to the right, I said, yeah, the face was open, left, maybe I pulled it this way, I would learn something. If it's a perfect shot, I learned nothing. So our problem is that we are always trying to succeed and do perfect things. Don't. Enjoy the mistakes. That's where you learn. And that's what's called experience. Success is not experience. Success is a string of failures. Things going wrong. Okay? Now, so, where was I? So we were the cotton yarn kings of India, and then we set up our first Vanaspati ghee factory in Calcutta. And when partition happened, we lost that. Family migrated to Pakistan, and we established ourselves here, established a trading house. Because we knew trading, that's what we knew. My father was always mad keen to be an industrialist. That's why we had already started with the first industrial investment in Calcutta. When we came over here, Pakistan of course, brand new country, enormous challenges, no economy, no banking, no nothing. The industry that was here were really run by Hindus, or they run by Sikhs or whatever, and they all took off to India. They had a relatively, very small industrial base, whatever it was, and nobody knew how to run them. So you're talking about, just imagine what you're talking about. Really challenging situation. And here around, that was 1948, around 1950, 49, we were encouraged to go out and set up a textile mill. So they're giving out licenses for textiles. So immediately my two uncles went off to Japan, booked the machines, brought them back, and we established with Dow Cotton Mills Limited here in London. The mills went on to become the largest textile mill. We expanded very rapidly, and we became the largest exporters of textiles. And textiles and all of the export trophies, etc., we were winning them all, etc. From there, that time, the government has set up what's known as the PIDC, the Pakistan Industrial Investment Corporation, in order to develop industry to take the principal risk because the country was in its infancy. So they would go out and establish industries and then they'll sell them off. Now, you have to realize the country, we didn't have the level of sophistication at that time that you have today throughout the world. So there wasn't a privatization process, there wasn't any such thing like that. It's a question of whoever wanted to buy would buy any one of those units. So the PIDC had set up here, and has set up a very competent organization to do this, particularly under Ghulam Farooq. Brilliant bureaucrat. So the PIDC would sell off units to whoever wanted to buy them. So we got into the acquisition process and we bought Budewala, we bought Lawrencepool. Anything else? No, those two. So we became significant in textiles. Lawrencepool, of course, we thought we were running like a cotton mill, only to realize that worsted is nothing like cotton. It's a wholly different paradigm. But anyhow, we bought it. So we had to do something with it. And so, as you know, I'm sure some of you have heard of the name Lawrencepool.
Yes.
So we developed the whole concept of Lawrencepool, branding, of quality products, etc. That was back in 1960. Budewala was bought in 1954. Dow Cotton Mill started in 1950. So we're well on our way. 1960, then of course UConn announced after discussion with the World Bank that they want the private sector to be involved in fertilizer, so they started opening the doors to fertilizer marketing. So were one of the parties who got involved with fertilizer marketing, and we started marketing of fertilizer long before we put up the project. Okay? That was also the 60s. Now, after that, we set up Dow Petroleum in 1968, and PSO today is Dow Petroleum, by the way. So in 1968 we set up Dow Petroleum, and obviously we developed a fairly large industrial base. In East Pakistan, we had acquired Kanafali Paper Mills Limited. Kanafali Paper Mills was a very interesting case. It was a paper mills which had run into the ground, enormous losses, and incapable of repaying the World Bank its loans. And the World Bank was facing this horrible scenario of having to write it off from its books. We bought it, changed it around, brought it into profitability, and we repaid the World Bank every single penny that they had lent us. And since that day, the World Bank loves us. Obviously, because it saved a lot of people's skin. So that happened. We also then expanded that. We set up a rayon and cellophane. It's an interesting story too. The cellophane rayon had never been produced from bamboo. So we had the idea, we conceived of the idea that rayon and cellophane could be produced from bamboo. So we got Mitsubishi to do the original research. They not only did the whole original research, proved it could be done, designed the plant, manufactured it, and delivered it, and installed it in Chittagong. So we started producing rayon and cellophane also. So by 1967, when we had the opening of that, we had the whole cabinet of Pakistan come down to the opening. That also included the governors of the two provinces, that is East Pakistan and West Pakistan governors, and all ministers, and Ayub Khan himself. And at that time, the group had become $250 million, employing 35,000 people. Pakistan at that time, I'm telling you, we were the first Asian tiger. We were far ahead of anything in the Far East. We were ahead of India. Because, I'll tell you why. When I came back in '68, I took on the responsibility of developing the first Pakistani multinational corporation is setting up all of its policies and procedures, organization structure, compensation systems. I was doing it here in Dawood Center in 1968. Already we were talking about development of management. We were moving management personnel from one plant to another as we saw that there's a possibility of the best talent developing. All of that was going on. And then came the changes, political changes, and the uncertainties that they wrought. And we had, of course, in 1971, East Pakistan fell. We lost half our group. We lost everything we had over there, which included, of course, the Kanafel paper, Kanafel rayon, included our Dawood shipping, with an internal shipping arrangement that we had, a shipping company that we had. We lost all of our assets out there. We lost everything. Compensation. The state bank offered us 10,000 rupees. So we said to them, perhaps you need it more than we do. So with that gone, then the People's Party came into power. End of 1971, a wholesale nationalization started in 72. They nationalized our petroleum company. They nationalized our life insurance, or what they call assurance. They nationalized that too. And we had its challenges. We had a very large family management structure. Half of it was in East Pakistan, half of it over here. We as a family had all decided right from the beginning that all of the next generation, each succeeding generation, would go abroad for education. Most of us were MBAs who came back. One was a PhD also in chemical engineering. So we had actually gone out of our way to ensure that the next generation had been prepared. When this took place, all of those people had to come back to West Pakistan. Fortunately, nobody was hurt. And we got onto the last flight, and they made it just in time. Because after that, there were no more flights from East Pakistan coming to the West. When they got here, the atmosphere was extremely hostile. The People's Party government, I mean, the hostility was absolutely unbelievable. Every turn, every person you met was hostile to you. Strange. You work, you create jobs, you pay your taxes, and people are hostile to you. Very strange. Anyway. So, we went through a very difficult period, both within the country and within the family, because there weren't enough jobs for everyone. So then, problems within the family started, and it's like, you know, who's played the game, you know, musical chairs? Anybody play this game?
Yes.
Those who haven't played, do you know what musical chairs is?
Yes.
Okay, well, there's a musical chairs. And you know what happened? It's so long as the music was going on, everybody would be going around the number of jobs there were, and when the music stopped, bam, everybody ran for a job. Some of the guys didn't have a job. What happens? They get offloaded. That's life. Even in families that happens. So we had to have separation. We had to reduce the manpower. So by 1973, already manpower was starting to get reduced in the family. By 1973, we come up further to 1976 or so, can you believe it? That my father was able to convince Zulfikar Ali Bhutto at that time to give us a new sanction for a fertilizer factory. Can you believe it? The People's Party. So we got this sanction, and we went out and found new partners and brought them in. And when we brought them in, we had our negotiations, and then we asked for appointment, of course, to meet the finance minister, no less person than our friend Mubashir Hassan. Who knows Mubashir Hassan? Put up your hands, please. No response, I shut up. Put up your hands, please. Who knows him? You heard of him?
Yeah.
Okay.
Still alive.
So we went to see him. Do you know what his response was? His response was, he said to the Americans, I'll meet you, but I will not meet the Dawoods, they stay outside. Okay. So we sat outside, the Americans went in, they came out an hour and a half later, and they were red in the face. So we said, what happened? They wouldn't speak to us. So we ran after them, and finally caught them in the Marriott Hotel, and said, what happened? He said, the finance minister told us that, why are you dealing with the Dawoods? Deal with the government. We'll give you much better rates. Don't deal with these chores. The response was that any finance minister can say that about anybody, it's their countrymen. We can't trust them. We're leaving. They packed their bags and disappeared. So you can imagine the sense of hostility. That project was finally transferred to the 4Gs. So we helped the 4Gs negotiate their agreements with Topso, and they successfully were able to successfully put up a plant. But really, that was our project. It doesn't matter. Country benefits. Mr. Bhutto lasted in 1977, and then we had, of course, a significant change. Who came in? The 90-day man. He said, I'll be out in 90 days, and 9 years later he's still sitting around. So he came in. Biggest problem we had in Pakistan at that time is the fact that Pakistan is going through serious economic difficulties. Ghulam Ishaq was the appointed finance minister. He had immense credibility in Washington. He stabilized the economy. Fantastic. But the mistake that was made is that Ghulam Ishaq is a bureaucrat. He knows how to stabilize an economy. He doesn't know how to grow it. They're two different personalities. Anyway, the interesting part was that in the middle of that, Majid Mufti, who used to be the production secretary, in those days, you know, with all these taken over industries, there was a huge hype of how brilliantly they're being managed by the government, and all the brilliant results they're bringing. Obviously, if every single policy is being turned around and rewritten to favor them, they're obviously going to perform. It doesn't take much sense to do that. And since the government owned those, so why not? So that's what was going on. And he had this huge affair to celebrate the success of the taken over industries. And he invited Ziaul Haq down there, and the whole cabinet came down, including Ghulam Ishaq. And Ghulam Ishaq gave a very interesting speech there. I've never forgotten it. I'm talking about the 80s now, huh? And he said in his speech, in 20 years, my ideas of nationalization have never changed. So I asked myself a question, was Zulfikar Ali Bhutto the architect of nationalization, or was it Ghulam Ishaq Khan? If you look at Bhutto when he took over, the first picture of Bhutto in power, but while he was sitting there, is Ghulam Ishaq standing next to him.
Yes.
So I asked myself a question, who was the real architect of nationalization? The second observation from him will tell you who is the real architect. His second observation in the same speech was, never will the commanding heights of the economy ever be returned to the private sector. Never will the commanding heights of the economy ever be returned to the private sector. So who do you think was an architect of nationalization? It's pretty obvious. Okay? That's mid-80s. Just imagine what type of atmosphere you've got. Anyway, so 80s rolled by. We had, of course, our family internal dissensions. One day I was sitting there because that time Dawood Hercules was being completely raped by the government. They were taking everything away. They took away all the profits of Dawood Hercules. And they took it away because they didn't issue an order. They ordered it verbally that you will have a fixed rate of return, and anything beyond that will go to the government. And they didn't even give it to us in writing. So first of all, they said you get a 20% return, and then they unilaterally changed it to 15. That's all they gave us. 15% return. We're the only company in the whole country who suffered that. So we had to struggle with that. We had to fight and go to the government. So my father and I went to the government once to talk to Mr. H.U. Baig, Secretary General Finance. 8 years. Again in the 80s. While we were sitting there, you know, we made our pleas and our presentation. Right at the end, my father turned around and said to him, Baig Sahab, how many family टूट रही है? Our family is breaking up. So Baig Sahab looks at it and says, ये तो बहुत अच्छी बात है. Government policy है कि आप लोग को तोड़ना है. Can you imagine that the governments of the country can actually want a complete breakup of families and groups? And that's exactly what their policy was. He said so. I heard it with my own ears. It's not second hand. Fine. We didn't get any justice given to us by General Zia. Never happened. And so, 1986, I think it was, finally it was decided to decontrol fertilizer. And then, you know, then we were able to start performing and start developing. In the 80s, we went into the 90s, we continued performing. Oh. You guys interested in all this? You want some sort of a record on this?
Why not?
You sure?
Yep.
Well, I'll give it to you on the condition you just keep listening. Don't do any reading. I'll tell you what page to read. We'll give you a copy each, just to help you. Only this page. The rest of the reading you can do when you're at home. Okay? I'm not giving this to you because I'm promoting the group. I'm only giving this to you for information.
Thank you, sir.
All right? So this is my copy. So you can hang on to it. This page only, please. For the moment. All right? We'll just go through the page. Everybody on the right page?
Yes.
If I see somebody smiling too much, I'll think they're on the wrong page. Okay? All right, let's just go through this. So, where were we? 90s, aren't we? So in 90s, you can see here that a few changes have taken place in year 2000 onwards. Anyway, now we come to some interesting parts. In 1997, I started buying Engro shares. When I realized that there was no hope of expansion in the fertilizer industry, I came up with an idea that why the heck not buy our competitor? When I looked around and I saw this competitor was wide open, I said, it's there for the taking. So I started buying Engro shares on the stock market. 1997. And I bought, and I bought, and I bought, and I bought. Until I got to 27%. Okay? 27%, the management got a bit upset. So they took out a case against me to stop me from buying any more. or to come on the board. I said, fine, go to court. So they went to court. 2 years we ran around in court, nothing happened as usual, and ultimately I told them, I said, listen, you can go on doing this for the next 20 years, it's fine, but remember one thing. If you're claiming in your balance sheet that you are a company of integrity, what you are doing is exactly the opposite. You're a listed company, you have no right to stop people exercising their votes and getting in and having representation on the board. Others don't be listed, that's fine then. But if you are listed, then you can't do that. And if you think that this is not going to eat into the very vitals of the organization, you're kidding yourself, because you're telling a lie. When you start telling a lie, you will become hypocritical. So finally we had negotiations with them, and in the negotiations it was agreed that management would run the company, we should have no objection, we'll only be on the board. That's all we're interested in, we're not interested in running the company, and go ahead. So then I came on the board, I think in 2003, two. I came on, myself and my son, we came on the board. Obviously there was a lot of, because there was a case, so obviously the Engro team felt very tense. I thought there's nothing to feel tense about. So much so that in our first board meeting, they proposed that the chairman should continue and become chairman for the next 3 years. He held 120 shares. I held 27% of the company. So chief executive quickly said, I propose that this gentleman should be the chairman. And I said, I put up my hand and I said, I second it.
I second.
Yes. Make him the chairman. The Zafar Sahib proposed it. Sayyid Naseem Ahmed was the chairman. So fine. Yes, let him be chairman. So he continued as chairman for the next 3 years, and by that time things had changed, and then you can see here, 2006, I was elected chairman. Okay? 2006, you can see all the changes that took place in between there, and we again continued to restructure the group. We had, of course, 4 major textile publicly listed companies, Dow Cotton, Budewala, Lawrenceburg, and Dylon, and we merged them all into one and called it Dow's Lawrenceburg. You see there in 2004, the top right. Okay? We went into technology, acquired Inbox, and that's an interesting story. You know how we acquired Inbox? Agyas and his colleagues had set up this company called Inbox, and they're producing computers. And they were expanding and growing, and they realized at some point that we're not going to make it unless we have a support of a group behind us. Because you don't need funding, you need to finance the expansion, etc., particularly the growth of sales. So he came up and said to us, he said, buy us out. I said, no, we're not interested. We're not in technology, we don't want to go that way. Okay? Sometime later he came back and said, buy us out. I said, not interested. No, you have to take majority. We don't want majority. We don't know how to run this company. No, you have to take it. We said, we don't want it. He said, you're not only going to take it, but you're going to take it at the price I'm going to tell you to take it. Would you believe it? He got that. We bought out majority at his price. But we said on one condition, you're going to run it. We're not going to run it. He said, fine. So he has shareholding. Some of the members of the board also have shareholding. They're running it even now. That was what, 2004? It's 10 years. We've never gone into management of that. So after becoming chairman of Engro, we restructured the group, which is now Hercules, We demerged the fertilizer out of it, and we call that DH fertilizer. We then converted, for the first time in the history of Pakistan, we had an insurance company called Central Insurance, and we know nothing about insurance. So why are we wasting our time? And yeah, an interesting thing happened. I was chairman of it, and I went to the AGM, and all the shareholders were there, and they all turned and said, you know, you got lousy results. But you're right, we have. And then they started this criticism and that criticism, and aage piche, just quietly sat and listened to it all. I said, listen, I have a problem. Everything you said is right, I have a problem though. They said, what? I said, this is a chore industry. I said, I can't work this industry because, you know, people are making false claims, they're giving false statements, they're doing false. I said, I can't handle that. I don't know what to do with this damn company. Because I will not subscribe to something that's fundamentally wrong. So I said, why don't you guys advise me? And the whole AGM turned over and we were all talking to each other how best to take the company forward and what to do, what not to do. It's a great experience. So we came to the conclusion we don't add any value in that area. We decided that we would convert it. When we went to the SECP, they had no idea on how to revoke an insurance license because there's no provision in law. So we had to work with them, they had to get the provisions in or whatever form. Finally, after a lot of aage-piche, negotiation, whatever, they finally agreed and they revoked our insurance license. So we didn't sell it, revoked it. And we converted it into the first listed private equity firm called Cyan. Now, in 2002, when the responsibilities of the chairmanship descended on my weak shoulders, you know, you have a certain amount of funds. Everybody has limited funds, even the United States government has. We've seen how rating agencies have even downgraded governments. So obviously everybody has limitation of funds. We had a certain amount of funds. We said we've got two choices. We're in textiles. Either we go put all the money into textiles and refurbish all of our textiles, or we put the money somewhere else. But we can't do both. So I made a decision, we get out of textiles. That's a painful decision, you know, when the family's been in textiles for 80 years. To suddenly make a decision, we exit. We're going to concentrate on chemicals and the growth in that area rather than in textiles. It was a very major decision. So we've shut down Dow Cotton, we shut down Borewala, we shut down Dialog, and we shut down now Lawrence Pool. But Lawrence Pool is now a marketing company. So we continue the brand. We now concentrate on retail rather than manufacturing. Okay? So we're completely out of textiles. Although we're the most diversified group in textiles. Nobody was in all fields, wool, cotton, and synthetics. We were right across the board. We're out of everything. And we instead concentrated on fertilizers. So in Engro, when we were there, we, under leadership of Asad Umar, we went in for 5 expansions all at the same time. We went in for expansion of the fertilizer, which is an investment of over $1 billion. We set up the world's largest state-of-the-art single-train urea process. This was done by Pakistanis in Pakistan. It's a very complex project because we had the old fertilizer project there and you had to integrate them. And that is an engineering feat in itself. And to do the whole project with such fantastic control, such fantastic management, was absolute amazing achievement. So we completed the project, invested $1 billion, and at the same time we expanded our polymer. We backward integrated. We went in for expansion of our Engro Vopak, which is the terminal, the chemical terminal. We also invested in 3, which are 4, foods, 4, and then I think we went to rice. 5. All at the same time. Ladies and gentlemen, don't be nuts. Never do 5. Do 1. Don't do 5. So they were, and the whole nature of Anglo has changed naturally. If you see its growth path, it is what it was or what it is now. There's nothing left, except that's history now. So we did all those expansions, completed, and just as we completed, we came under some pretty heavy weather. The government refused to honor its gas supply agreement. So there's a brand new plant there with $1 billion investment, and the government won't give you the gas for it. They won't honor the contract. So sorry. Now I'm not going to, because it's all being recorded, you know, I'm going to be a little careful. I'm going to tell you why, but you can guess why. And I refused. I said, I'm sorry, we don't do those things. They say, you know the consequences. Of course I understand the consequences. But I said, we don't do those things. Sorry. So we suffered 3.5 years. Can you imagine that a brand new fertilizer factory of that size gets gas for 9% of the year? Just 9%. And we had to suffer that. And obviously that led us into a situation where we had to restructure the loans. So we had that challenge, we successfully restructured it, and we have constantly worked with the government, and now they have agreed to honoring the gas contract, which was decided last month. In addition to that, the government has specially asked us to put our best foot forward to do the LNG project, something that we said we don't want to do. We don't want to do it, but we don't like to get involved in anything where there is any hint of wrongdoing. So we as the board had decided we're not going to do it. But then I got called from the powers that be. They said you have to participate. We don't want this bid to be a bid by one party only. There has to be competition. So we want you to compete. What do I say? So I said, okay. So the board then had to reverse its decision. We participated, and naturally we won, because we are the ones who have the capacity and the capability to perform. Well, what is that? We have everything lined up for LNG. Everything's lined up. We've been ready for years. We're the only ones who, the day that the agreement is signed, we could have the LNG in operation, delivering gas in 11 months. Anybody else would take 2.5 to 3 years. We're the only ones that can do it in 11 months. Guaranteed. Now, where can there be a competition? There can't be. If you sign with somebody else, it's going to take 2.5, 3 years. You sign with these guys, they do it in 11 months. Obviously, the government's got a crisis on its hands. It wants to get the gas in so that it can alleviate the problems of the people. So we obviously got the LNG contract. Then, as you know, we've been working on the TiE project for the last 4 or 5 years. We got the block, we've been slowly developing it, we've got international consultants in. We spent an enormous amount of money, $6 million, just to get all the various studies done, concerning all aspects of that investment, including the environmental aspect, including the aspect regarding to displacement of people, regard to water, you name it, covered every area. And we set up this company called Sindh Anglo Coal Mining Corporation, or for short we call it SECMEC. So SECMEC is a joint venture with the government of Sindh. They have 40%, we had 60%. But we knew that this project, because it's coal, it would not get financing unless there was a government guarantee. So he asked the government, would you please give a guarantee so we could get people to take interest in financing the project. So they agreed, and Asif Zardari, through Raja Parvez Ashraf, gave that on the condition that the SECMEC had to be majority government owned. So we said fine, we gave them 11%, we reduced our holding to 49, Sindh government's 51, now it's majority owned by the government, and now those guarantees can be become effective. And as you saw on the 31st of January, a unique event, unique in the sense that the heads of the two most important political parties had the sagacity to get together, come all the way over to TiE in order to break ground for the project. To me, that's far more important than breaking ground of the project, because it shows political maturity. It shows finally Pakistan's coming to the stage where national issues can take precedence over personal differences. And I think it's a fantastic achievement. I had the privilege, of course, of traveling with the Prime Minister and with Mr. Asif Ali Zardari, and I must say, extremely positive attitude from both sides. Fantastic. And the other thing about TiE is that TiE is a game changer. It's as important as the Tarbela Dam. It's as important as the finding of Sui gas. It is that important. The area that we've got is called Block 2. It is 79.6 square kilometers. It has within it 2 billion tons of coal. It is 1% of TiE. Just 1%. And TiE is an amazing deposit. It's the only deposit in the whole world where 175 billion tons of coal is all within one area. Usually it's spread all over. It's all concentrated. First class lignite coal. We know it. We've done all the studies. 2 billion tons of coal. So the project that we've got is to set up a mining operation to produce 3.5 million tons of coal a year to feed 600 megawatts of power generation. And both have to go at the same time because you need a major offtake to make the mining operation successful. So they have to both at the same time. The investment level is $1.6 billion, 75% debt, 25% equity, $400 million worth of equity, which would require $150 million from each from the two sponsors, the Sindh government and Engro, and $100 million that has to be raised otherwise. So that's how the project is being structured. We had that privilege before. When I graduated, we were signing the World Bank agreements. At that time, Sri Northern had approached the World Bank for a loan of $12 billion to expand its network. And the World Bank said at that time, unless you have a major off-taker, the answer is no. That major off-taker was now Hercules Chemicals Limited. And the two agreements were signed on the same day at the same time. Sri Northern's agreement and our agreement. So same thing being repeated 40 odd years later. It's amazing. Here in TiE we're doing exactly the same thing again. So it's a very, very important project from a national point of view, because otherwise the country is going to be perpetually saddled with having to import molecules for which they're paying hard dollars. TiE is ours. You don't have to pay anybody hard dollars, you pay rupees. And this can really bring about energy security of the nation. The capacity of TiE, the block, 5,000 megawatts, can provide enough coal to generate 5,000 megawatts for 50 years. So that tells you that's 1% of TiE. So you get an idea how important this whole project is. We went there, there's nothing there. It's the boonies. There's absolute nothing there. And you're going to be transforming that into a vibrant community economy as we start to make all the investments and start to develop the current coal fields. So is there anything left? Huh? Oh, okay. Somewhere along this journey, you see here, 2012, we acquired the largest shareholding in HUBCO. International Power disinvesting. The credit goes to my son, Hussain Dawood, who negotiated the whole thing, brought it to the table, convinced the board, we invested in it, and now HUBCO can play a make a significant contribution to alleviating our energy crisis. It's a fantastic location. It can be done. HUBCO produces more than 10% of the total electrical supply of the country. So we've got a little bit of energy interest. Now, is there anything left? Done? I have permission to close. Q&A. Oh, okay. All right, okay. All right. Well, I was supposed to become the member of the Pakistan member in the Commonwealth Development Corporation in London. So I was in London, I got a call from Mr. Sagdar at that time, I'm talking about 1999. He said, we're nominating you as a member. Is that all right? I said, fine. 98. I said, fine. Well, I came back, nobody said anything. I forgot about it. I find out that late Shaukat Mirza has been nominated. I said, very good, you've got a very good person. I'm glad he's nominated. It's fine with me. So when I was sitting in my office in Lahore, I got a call from Mr. Sagdar saying, we want to nominate you as chairman of the Pakistan Poverty Alleviation Fund. So I said, Sagdar, do you know who you're talking to? I don't know the first thing about poverty. He said, no, we want you to be the chairman. Okay. So that was 1999, I became chairman, February 15, 1999. I'm still chairman. The important thing is that we've set up a first-class, high-integrity organization. We will not allow wrongdoings at any time. It's an amazing, amazing corporation. Do you know it's 100% government-owned, 100% private sector run. We make all the decisions of the board. Nothing is referred to the government. Nothing. Except when we change a chief executive, because the first chief executive retired after 10 years, that was the only time I had to go to the government and say, you're the owner, we've selected someone, do you have your approval? That's the only time I went to the government. Now the government has the right to nominate 1/3 of the board. I'm one of their nominees. So we had initial Secretary of Finance and Secretary of Economic Affairs Division. I mean, you know how it happens in bureaucracy, and then that becomes additional secretary and then goes down to the joint secretary. It doesn't matter. They're still engaged. And then we have civil society as the other board members. And that organization, when we started, there was total number of microcredit loans of 50,000. It's now 3.5 million. And we're growing. The organization has been able to raise $1 billion. But you don't know anything about it. And we're not going to go out and tell you either. The reason is this. You know how it is. When people see a pot of money in this country, everybody makes a beeline for it. So keep a low profile. Nobody notices you there. Get on with life. At least we're doing what we want to do, is alleviating poverty. So we've done a large number of projects within the country. We are taking on different areas and raising the whole poverty profile. We're looking at disaster management. We're looking at management of water. We're looking at how to get people to develop their micro assets and pull themselves out of poverty. So we have one of the lowest delivery costs in the world, and well, things are moving. That's one thing. The other thing we did, which I must tell you, is that in 1962 we set up the Dow College of Engineering Technology, which is set up in order to produce graduates for metallurgy, because at that time the steel mill was coming in, electronics, and chemical engineering. And that's the site that you see there near Islamia College. And we were picking up the whole cost of running the college. We got nationalized. When Mr. Zulfikar Bhutto came in, he decided to nationalize the college. So I had the unfortunate experience of having to go and hand it over. Of course, all of this is verbal. Nothing is in writing. So we handed it over. We said, you take the college, you run it. Our plan was to set up 6 such colleges within the country. It got terminated at the first level. You know, in the first year, our college, it was not authorized to be degree awarding, so the students took Karachi University examinations. And in those days, Karachi University degrees were held in high esteem abroad. When you had a Karachi University bachelor's degree, you could go into a master's degree abroad, no more. Now you go there, you have to go back to the bachelor's and do it all over again. So it was a respected qualification. And the first year, out of the 45 students who took the Karachi University exams, 44 of them got first class.
Wow.
And today, you can see the corporate leaders are the graduates of Dow College. Khalid Subhani, who's currently CEO of Anglo Polymer, Sohaib Ajad Siddiqui, who was CEO of Siemens. You've got Humayun Bashir, head of IBM. You've got one other, Asad Khan, who's the head of PTV. He was, he's now come on. So you can see how one single institution can have such a profound effect on society. But you've got to realize it's going to take 40 years. So don't worry about it. Let's start. So with that in mind, we then set up a new school here, a new business school, called the Karachi School for Business and Leadership, which one learning from this, ladies and gentlemen, always be careful. There we were, we decided to get together and debated whether we should go into a new school or support IBA. We thought IBA needs some competition, so we set up this new school. And we were sitting there, sort of a quasi-board meeting, but we didn't even have a legal entity. We just got together. So I got this international call, and normally I don't take calls when I'm inside a board meeting. But since it's a quasi-board meeting, I said, "Chalo, I'll take this one." So I stepped outside. I came back 5 minutes later, and there was silence, you know, nobody said anything. Suddenly one guy turned and said, "Well, congratulations, you're the chairman." I said, "I never stood for the chairman." "Too bad. You're the chairman." So more silence. Everybody looked at the watch. 5 minutes gone. "Well, time over," and everybody leaves. And I'm left holding the bag. So that was March 2008. And I then decided to go abroad, see if I could get an international partner in order to set up the school at international levels. So I went to the United States, I went to MIT, I went to Babson, I went to Boston, I was going to Harvard, but I had to rush back because my wife wasn't too well. And we didn't get anything there. So we're wondering what to do. And then a friend of mine who was in Cambridge said, why don't you come to Cambridge? So I said, you set up the meeting, I'll come. So he set up the meeting. So the 1st September 2008, I visited Cambridge and met quite a few of them. They were very gracious. They also had a lunch in my honor. There was the Pro-Vice Chancellor. There were 3 deans, 6 faculty, senior faculty members. And of course, the usual grilling. These people are not stupid. Why do you want to set up a new business school? What is the reasoning? What's the background, etc. While I was there, I had spent the whole day there, I got the feeling, this is the beauty of entrepreneurship. Feel. You've got to suss the place out. You've got to suss the people. I got this feeling that they may be interested. So I resolved in my mind I'm going to go back there every month. The other thing about entrepreneurs is the principle of JK. Does anybody know what is the principle of JK? Please? I know. It's known as John Kana. Salaga John Kana. Choromat. Get over of it. Don't let go. So I use the principle of John Kana.
Persistence.
If you want to use a nicer word, yes. So I went back there on the 13th of October. And I met the dean at that time. His name was Arnold DeMeyer. And I said, Arnold, we want to set up a new business school. And we'd like to partner with you. So he said to me, and ladies and gentlemen, have you got pencils and papers ready? Because you're going to be answering this question. Come on. He said to me, just across the table, he said to me, Hussain, setting up a new business school is not exciting. Cambridge making some money is not exciting. What makes your business school exciting? Now, ladies and gentlemen, answer the question. Who has the courage? Who's first? Answer the question. What makes your business school exciting? Oh, yeah? No? Yeah? Okay.
Produce entrepreneurs, leaders.
Okay, hold it. Before you answer, I want to make something clear to you. This is what's known as a tipping point question. In other words, a question that will make you go this way or this way. It's on a tip. If it goes this way, you get shown the door. If you go this way, you've got them in the bag. So it's a very simple, but a very risky question. Now think about an answer. Yes? You have to speak up.
Your vision and your drive makes it exciting.
Didn't cut any ice with them. You've got to realize that the listener is the one who's going to be making the decision. What are you going to say to him which will get that listener to pay attention and then want to know more?
We know what to be required for a business organization, like 60 years of experience. We know what business need, and
have you ever met an English professor?
No.
Wouldn't cut any ice.
Oh, yeah?
No. Next. Think of it, it's a totally different mindset.
Largest English-speaking population. Largest English-speaking population. It will set up enterprises in this part of the world.
That's an interesting answer. Good. Okay. Not quite sure how the was a good reply.
So basically, the other schools are producing the graduates in so-called MBAs, but the difference of the PSPL is the thought leadership that we are missing in society.
That won't cut any ice with it. No, it won't. You're right at the beginning. You don't even have a legal structure. You don't have a corporation or anything. You've got nothing. You're going up to this guy and saying, I want to partner with you, and you're bringing nothing to the table. Not even a break. So how do you answer him? Your business school, setting up a new business school is not exciting. Cambridge making some money is not exciting. What makes your business school exciting? You know, there's 50 people chasing, 50 institutions chasing Cambridge for wanting to partner with them. Why would he go with you? Come on, you got to say something.
Visionaries?
Yeah, this school might actually produce somebody who might, take this country out of its current situation. This English professor might be responsible for that.
I like it. But the only thing, I don't know whether he believes that, but I like it. That's a good reply. Yes?
Most business schools teach you is this more like theory.
Huh?
Apply that theory in practicality. So what matters really for any school or any business school is that applied knowledge to practice.
No, it won't cut the eyes with him. I'm trying to interpret. Please forgive me. Yes.
The entire nation is looking after a leader. So if this business school is doing the job of making leaders, then probably everybody want to enroll in it. And
Well, you got to appreciate there's 50 countries chasing him. So you're just one more. Why would he be, as an English... Actually, the interesting thing about Cambridge is that there's not a single Englishman there. This guy's a Belgian. The guy who ran the program was a German. You know, his deputy was an American. I didn't see any Englishman there anyway. The guy who introduced me to him was an Indian. Sorry. Huh?
My school would make my students excited.
Please forgive. No. Your answer is a good one. Your second. Huh?
Quality education in cheapest possible limits.
Oh, no, please forgive me.
You go to school where they train you to think outside the box and helps you answer that very question which you always talk about.
Sorry?
The school that basically trains you to think outside the box and actually answer this question which you're always stumbling at.
I like that. That's good thinking. Okay. You want to know what the answer was? What was the answer which would excite him to want to partner with? Yes, you want to try?
One more try. Sir, if you can, we should tell the English professor that we are the ones who can carry the legacy of this Cambridge in our country.
They've already got it. The largest players in the market here are Cambridge. So, and as a business school dean, he's not interested in that. Because that's O-level and A-level. He's over here at the Judge Business School, which is doing MBAs and PhDs. It's too far away.
This is where you will get the faculty. Your next Cambridge faculty will come from.
All right.
The most exciting thing about my business school will be to create ruthless, innovative business ideas in one institution.
Well, you can get that.
Overlap the challenges of next century.
If you're going to be that ruthless, maybe you should go to a jail. There are a lot of ruthless guys there. No? So you want to know?
Yep. Yes.
Fine, who's going to pay me? Come on.
I think I know it. Business.
There's no free lunches in life. Come on. Who's putting money on the table? Who will put the money on the table for the answer? Come on. Anybody? Anybody pay me?
We can't pay you. Sorry.
You are very costly, sir.
Did I ever say how much? You're making assumptions. You see, those are questions you ask in order to avoid. But you see, now that's what you call it. Here's a guy who gives me 2,000 old rupees of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. You think that's good pay? Huh? Would anybody take this as legal tender? Nobody? Sorry, there's not payment. Come on, who's going to pay me? Thank you very much for offering. Oh, ball pen. Chilo, we've got one payment, one ball pen. Anything else? Oh, there's a gentleman there who was always marketing himself. He was selling magazines. Thank you.
Fine. Nobody needs to offer anything.
No more. Marshall. Well, I don't know what happened. All I can tell you is apparently I must have said the right thing. And I said to him, I said, Arnold, I can answer that in one question, in one sentence. He said, what? I said, we want to take education to scale.
I beg your pardon?
We want to take education to scale. He said, what does that mean? I said, we want to produce the leaders who go out and spread that leadership to others.
That was my answer.
Was it? It's what words you choose also matters. Okay? So he apparently liked it. So we started, spent the day discussing this further, and then that was on the 13th of October. I said I'm going to come back again. I went back again on the 21st of November, and then we went back again on the 18th and 19th of December. This is all 2008. And on January the 6th, 2009, the Deputy Dean came to Karachi. And we had a function at the Sin Club. He gave his speech there. February the 9th, 2009, we went over there to sign an MOU with Cambridge. Now, ladies and gentlemen, an MOU is no value. Just remember that. Cambridge's walls are like wallpaper of MOUs. What matters is the agreement, not the MOU. I am amazed that this one individual, Arnold Damaya, was able to move 700 Cambridge professors and faculty members to all come to the conclusion to execute an agreement with the Karachi School for Business and Leadership. 700. You have no idea how complicated the decision-making structure is in Cambridge, because every faculty member has a right to express his opinion. I don't know how the heck he did it. But by April the 4th, we not only negotiated an agreement, but got it approved by Cambridge. And on April 4th, he himself came over here, and we signed the agreement here at the Pearl Continental. Salim Raza was our chief guest. He was State Bank Governor at that time. On April 4th, 2009. By the way, we only had a legal entity. We had nothing else. And they had that much confidence that they signed the agreement with us. Thereafter, you needed money. And you've already seen how difficult it is to get money, even here. All I got was a flower. Didn't get the money.
Sri Lankan rupee.
I thought you guys would be happy to give me a lot of money, so I could give it to the school. I got this lovely flower. Anyway, so raising the money is not easy. So I had to run around trying to raise money, etc. And finally, cut a long story short, we started we have a school for girls called the Dow Public School for Girls, and we got 1,700 girls there. And we have this piece of property. I said, my daughter's running that. I said to her, can you please, we'll build you a new building, move your children where they are now, what you call the pre-primary children, to the new facility, and give us the old one so we can build a school there. So all of that had to be done before the next academic year. It was a mad rush. So we started construction on a completely brownfield site, greenfield site. It was the 1st of March 2011. And we completed the campus in all respects, everything internal, the works, by 31st of August 2012. 112,000 square feet covered area. Everything was done. We had the best architects in the world. He's a friend of mine, William McDonough. Come and see the building. It speaks for itself. I don't have to tell you. And 31st of August 2012, 20th September 2012, our first MBA class stepped in. So within a period of what, 4 years, 4.5 years, if you say from March 2008 to September 2000, August, September 2012, 4 years, 4.5 years. And I'm happy to tell you that the first batch is about to graduate this May. So, you're all invited to come and visit the school sometime. And remember one thing, it's a national effort. It belongs to all of us. Let's make it our school. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think you've heard me enough. You must be tired out. Listen to this going on. So now it is your turn to take even action against me. Questions and answers.
How do you find and hire people to run your multiple business? Like, how do you judge people?
How do you judge people? Judging people is probably one of the most difficult challenges you have. Because you're seeing the individual, you may see them multiple times, but you're seeing the individual in short bursts of 1 hour, 1.5 hours, or whatever it is. And even if you take an individual who's 24 years old, you're compressing the development of that individual over 24 years and trying to understand it in 1 hour. So that's a challenge. If they're older, then of course the challenge is even greater. So judging people is very difficult. I have found that perhaps one of the ways to select right people is, first of all, to let them understand what you stand for. Because if you don't have the same values, it is better not to get together. Okay? So that's important, because that individual is going to perform in that environment. And that environment is there, it's based on certain corporate ethos. That corporate ethos is a reflection of the values of the organization, what it stands for. So the individual doesn't identify with that, you don't want him, because he or she will be a misfit. But if you feel that that person comes through that, then you have to go into a more intensive program where you have to question it. And usually what we do is get more than one individual doing it, to reduce the risk of having a person enter and then not fitting in and leaving. It hurts the individual, it hurts the organization.
Do you prefer skills or attitude? How do you prefer attitude over skills?
No, you see, those are two different things. The values are something that's inherent in you. But if you only have values and no skills, you're not much use. You have to have skills. Always you're trying to match skills against the job. Because what you want is that that individual, when he comes in, has the best chance of succeeding, of contributing, of achieving. So then you're building the individual by his performance, or her performance, rather than trying to put them into a job where they're working on their weaknesses. So you need to know the individual from that viewpoint. You've also got to realize that people change with time. And so you've got to keep that engagement going.
We have a hand up there and then what is happening first?
Sure. If I pick backtracks from
You have to talk out so everybody can hear.
If I need to backtracks from your talk, this is what I gather. You entered into expensive, high barriers to entry areas with lots of money. You went into futuristic enterprises. So that was a strength. This is how you evolved the businesses. But there's also one thing missing, and that's evolution of enterprises. Like they go from this place to over a long period of life. Was it your lower tolerance threshold or boredom? What was that?
Well, what you're really saying is that there are two ways of growing. One is organic and the other is inorganic. Inorganic is when you're going for acquisitions or you're going for mergers or whatever, and then there's the organic. And both of them require an enormous amount of time. Most of the mergers and acquisitions that fail, they fail because of the clash of corporate culture. So if you're acquiring, you may acquire certain assets and turnover and all of that going on, but you're also acquiring a totally different organizational ethos, which is at variance with the one that you've got. Now the question is, how do you merge them together so they'll become one? And that takes years. So when you look at that, you're putting a lot of time and energy into doing that. And I can assure you that it consumes an enormous amount of creative energy of the corporation in doing that. If you're going organic, well, organic is there, but then you're bringing in people from the outside. Like when we went to Grow Foods, we never had a food man on board. It was a whole new greenfield initiative. So you had to go out and find people and then systematically build up an organization and then weave them together so that they perform. So there are two ways, but they're both challenging.
Maybe it's not your hands. Just a second.
Oh, he's in charge.
Two questions.
But you have to stand up so everybody can hear. Two questions not allowed. One.
I hope others also will.
Okay, you ask two questions. I have the option to answer one, and one after everybody else's.
That's your problem. One is that, at partition you lost some assets in India.
Huh?
At partition you lost some assets in India. Then at the time of the fall of Dhaka, a lot of went away in Bangladesh. And then again you had nationalization and all that. So despite all these things with the government, what is that? I mean, why do you get the patience or the hope, or what is it that you don't run away, like many others have? That's my first question. And my second question is, you started off with, learning from mistakes and failures. Looking back, and you mentioned a few large decisions. Looking back, is there a decision you think you should have made differently with hindsight experience? These are my two questions.
Good question. Okay. Okay. The first question you said, with all the vicissitudes that you've gone through, why are you still hanging around here? Fair enough. It's a very good question. Prime Minister Badawi of Malaysia came here, and he brought a team with him, a team of business people. So we engaged with them, and one of the team members said to me, I want to have a coffee with you. Now, he was a Malaysian who looked more like us, like a man from the subcontinent, rather than the Malaysian, classical Malaysian. So I said, fine, I'll have a coffee with you. So I sat down with him in the Marriott, and he said, I want to learn one thing from you. He said, you guys are survivors. How do you do it? Well, the coffee wasn't long enough to tell him. You're asking the same question. Do we have a coffee that's long enough? It's strange. I suppose what makes you hang in there, I suppose, is your affiliation with your nation. Yeah. With your country. You must realize in life, you never get what you deserve. That never happens. Yes, you've got to realize that every time you go through one of these downs and you come out stronger. You come out a little bit more experienced. And I'll be honest with you, it's a lot of things that people don't realize. It is that People call it luck. Plays a very large part. Well, it's nice, it's an easy way to use a four-letter word called luck. I don't mind that, but I think it's a little bit more deeper than that. You see, your ability to succeed is directly proportional to the environment within which you are working. If you are at odds with that environment, you cannot succeed. And the outstanding example of that, my father was a brilliant entrepreneur. His capacity to work, his intellectual capacity, his passion, his energy, his drive, his courage. He had everything going for it. But his time period was the 60s. That same individual, in my opinion, would totally fail today. Yet you'll be applying the same principles today, but it's a different environment. So you have to realize environment plays the largest part. Okay? And ladies and gentlemen, when you go around and you see an aquarium and you see the fish in there, just imagine that that aquarium is the fish's only world. That is the environment which it exists. Isn't that a horrible feeling? You're trapped in that body of water. You can't do anything else. But ladies and gentlemen, let me engage you. You're trapped too. It's called Earth. You're not going to the moon. So this is your aquarium. And this is the environment within which you have to work. Okay?